Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 12th edition of Red Shoes Talks. Today with very, very special guests that are joining our Red Shoes Talks, which I feel very honored and also proud that they're joining me in this conversation today. For one, we have Jeff Hurst, I need to read this, President and Co-Lead of Marketing at Expedia Group and President of VRBO, and joined by Kevin Lowcroft, VP Partner Success Vacation Rental at Expedia Group. Guys, welcome to Red Shoes Talks. I hope I got your titles right. It has been a while since we've been able to talk. For a fact, it has been in New Orleans in 2019. So a lot of things have happened. And before we get jumping into the conversation, I'd love to get an update from you both. Titles have changed, company names have changed, other things have changed. So I want to start with you, Jeff. Just give us a quick rundown where you're at within the Expedia Group and what keeps you busy during the day.
Perfect. Yeah. So Expedia Group's been, in a journey like almost everyone in the hospitality industry through the pandemic. And so we did some reorganization. Certainly we're focusing on where we thought we could be the best in the world. And in doing that, part of my responsibility changed. And so I'm now responsible for the VRBO brand in a similar capacity than I was in the past, but more focused on the traveler side and how we, find new travelers and bring them to our partners around the world. And then I'm also focused on our, what we call our portfolio brands. And so Orbitz, Hotwire, Travelocity, eBookers in Europe, and What If in Australia. And so we're essentially have gotten more functional, and in that, Kevin's role also changed. Kevin used to run partner success for VRBO, and now he runs the vacation rental partner team for all of Expedia Group. And so we are still tied at the hip, but Kevin spends all of his time across EG on that topic, and I'm a bit more traveler focused these days.
Wonderful, Jeff. Thank you for that. Please do apologize if I said VRBO and you said it so nicely, VRBO. That's something, as a former board member of HomeAway, I hope you forgive me of not saying that the correct way, but we won't dwell on it. So that sounds like a big challenge and a big portfolio that you're looking after, but it's great that you have now the opportunity to bring the vacation rental piece across many other verticals where you have touch points with consumers, which is fantastic. So Kevin.
Great to be here, Simon. Ultimately, Jeff brought it up through the transformation of a number of different functions and roles within Expedia Group. My own role changed and transformed from being partner success for VRBO, and so dedicated to sort of vacation rentals within VRBO exclusively, to now looking after account management, partner success for all vacation rentals across all of Expedia Group. And so in many respects, it's bringing some of the great knowledge that we had from our days as VRBO exclusively into the broader Expedia Group. But it's also actually leveraging quite a bit of the tools and functionality and information and knowledge from EG.
Absolutely. I mean, that's, from an outside, it's still quite challenging to understand, because for a consumer perspective, you have a VRBO and you have an Expedia brand. And one thing I want to start with, especially what Jeff has just mentioned, start off with, what does that mean for the marketplaces and the vacation rental inventory? Obviously, AJL Consulting and Red Shoes Talks, we talk about vacation rental. This is what we're strong about and care about, and I, our audience wants to hear, how important is that for me to understand what VRBO does on a standalone brand and Expedia when it comes to hotel and also vacation rental content. Maybe Jeff or Kevin, you want to give us some more light on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to start there. And so, I think in general, we're on a journey where each of the brands stands for, serving a unique audience with a unique value proposition. And so if you think about a lot of the Expedia Group's history, a lot of it is anchored in, Orbitz was an air brand, Expedia was an air brand, and they built out, full OTA businesses. Hotels.com is obviously a hotels focused brand, and VRBO, and in particular when it was vacationrentals.com or vacation rentals by owner, was really about the supply type. And so now we're taking these brands and we're really thinking about, what do our target audiences want and how do we best serve them? And so in the case of VRBO, it's all about what we call a complex family use case. And imagine, Simon, you're taking a trip with your kids and you're celebrating your son's 7th birthday, but you're bringing your in-laws and you're bringing, mother-in-law, father-in-law. We think it's the most difficult trip on the planet to actually be a success. You've got all these different use cases, all these different tastes, and you're trying to get it all to work in one place. And if we can solve that, then we can solve anything. And then similarly, Expedia, and you've seen this in their new ad campaigns, is all about being the companion that helps make the trip easy. And hotels.com is about loyalty and frequency of travel and how you drive that. And as a partner, it should be a little bit less important what each of the brands means, so much as each of them is helping to reach a new audience, bring new travelers to your doorstep, and help you be more successful. And so that's part of how we've created some of this split, is basically that the brands can go stand for something unique and a unique value proposition and an assortment that gets them there, while Kevin and his teams are just presenting all of Expedia Group at once, a little bit agnostic of how you went on Travelocity or Orbitz or VRBO.
Okay, that's a lot clearer context. So you talked about the word of partner. Now I want to jump on that, which is obviously supply, right? So how do you define your partners? And talking about supply, I mean, obviously you've been very aggressive on ad campaigns, also addressing rent by owners or RBOs directly, as well as PMCs. How is it for people to navigate to partner with you? Does that mean a property management company who is working with a VRBO can then has the ability to be present on pretty much all the different channels that Expedia has to offer within its house of brands, or is that still different?
You want to start, Kevin?
Yeah, sure. Happy to take this one. I'd say, Simon, to answer your question, let me sort of address it in a couple of ways. The first is we are very interested in the different inventory types, and so I think that there is utility to having inventory that is rent by owner. There are also a great number of property management companies in the world that we partner with. And we're happy to do so. And we think about the two inventory types as not necessarily competing, but ultimately both have a great place on all of our websites across Expedia Group. Now, how a property management company might come to work with us, I think that there are two ways to connect to Expedia Group. There's one coming directly through VRBO, or the other going directly through Expedia. And in either place, you ultimately get distributed to all of the websites within the Expedia Group family of websites. It's just a matter of how you want to work with Expedia Group. And so the tooling and technology, when you integrate directly with VRBO, is just a little bit different than the tooling and technology that you would work with when you integrate directly with Expedia. But ultimately, you show up on all the different sites, regardless of who you integrate with.
So when you look at it from a VRBO standpoint, strategically, where if you would value RBO inventory over a PMC inventory or managed inventory, would that be viewed as strategically equal when it comes to your acquisition strategy on supply, or how should we understand that?
I certainly think of them as being equal. And so when I look at the competitive landscape, there's a competitor who shall remain nameless that's, I'd say, primarily focused on the professional inventory. And there's a separate competitor who's primarily focused on the rent by owner, and probably even, actively saying they don't want the professional inventory. And so we think we're in this spot where we do both really well. And so we've got growing teams on both sides. We want to build both of those relationships. We want to be able to we're serving both use cases, because, it was the same 7 years ago as 20 years ago as today. In general, the travelers want the house that's best for them. On the edges, they may opt for professional or may even opt for rent by owner, but in general, they're shopping for the house, and the dynamics are so different destination by destination that we just want all the good houses.
absolutely. We all want the good houses. That's a great line for my next question. The supply question as well. How do you differentiate also in terms of quality? I mean, is it, where do you see the biggest growth? So let's start with the growth first. So if you have that equally, which I think makes a ton of sense from my viewpoint as well, Jeff. And one thing that the industry wants to know a lot of times when we consult to property managers, how much of inventory is organized, what is managed, what is rent by owner. Where do you see for VRBO and the Expedia Group as a whole, the largest growth potential in terms of supply? Is that more on the individual side or is that more on the property management side? Or also the next question is, do you see more individually owned units being more transferred into managed inventory as well?
Yeah, I think so it's an interesting question, and many owners, they may actually move their properties into a property management company because they have decided that they no longer want to take on the daily tasks associated with managing their home on our site or the site of potentially a competitor. Where the growth comes from, I think if a PMC, a property management company, is going to be growing, well, their inventory is a rent by owner unit of inventory. They just happen to be the one managing it. And so to me, the growth in this industry comes from the availability of homes and supply. Whether or not that supply comes from a rent by owner or a property management company, like Jeff said, I think it's a little bit irrelevant. I want all of the homes, and I want all of the homes so that we can supply them to travelers, regardless of what site they're shopping on. And we're in a time of, extreme demand for this category and for this inventory type. As people are traveling domestically, people are looking for, more privacy, more space, places to go with their families, et cetera. And to me, I want all of the supply. I don't necessarily care, and I do treat it equally when it comes from a rent by owner or a property management company. In terms of professionalism, I go back and forth. There are great property management companies. There are some property management companies that deliver potentially a less than stellar traveler experience. There are great rent by owner owners, right? Yeah. And then there are those that deliver a less than stellar experience. And so our goal as Partner Success is really to coach up all the partners to be as great as they can so that we can help them maximize production on all of our sites.
I may add one thing, Simon. I mean, I think
sure.
In this exact moment, I think you're actually seeing more preference for professional because there's so much more demand. Yielding is harder. You can fill an entire calendar, and a lot of rent by owners have actually taken inventory offline in order to go stay in the home. And so there's been a different dynamic in the moment. I think long-term, you're going to see two things. I think there'll be more units coming in on the rent by owner side, and it's increasingly going to become a feeder product for the professional managers. And, even some of the language you use, I think is something the industry is going to have to get past, of like us versus them, RBOs versus property managers. RBOs are the, awareness channel for how property managers grow. And coming out of this, there's so many new travelers that have experienced the product who are going to come back and stay in vacation homes. More RBOs are increasingly going to either add homes that are professionally managed or to choose to have the managers do that work for them because expectations are changing. And frankly, the stakes are changing because yield is so much higher and occupancy is so much higher. Like even in my own use case, we have a second home that we've managed rent by owner for a long time. We actually added one with a property manager, and I'm completely blown away how much stuff gets done that I never expected a property manager to do, to where it's like rethinking all the math for me. And so there's a little bit of a value prop gap for managers on being sure people know they do more than greet the guests and turn over the home. That's really managing everything in and out of stay.
Absolutely, and that's something that we've been saying as well, to say, hey, we need to do such a better job in communicating our value prop to owners because the organized market is doing so much more for the owners they don't know, but they need to justify their margins as well. And especially more than ever now where technology becomes complex, margins are compressed. We need to tell the owners a better story. And to the second point that you've mentioned, and I've raised that issue as well with the famous 2019 Focusrite study where, where it became apparent that nearly 60% of US travelers have not yet rented, right? So So that, that alone, thinking about the total addressable market that is coming to our space, will demand more professionalism in any case. If it's RBO or managed inventory, doesn't matter. It needs to be good inventory. So let's go a little bit deeper on that in terms of quality and everything else. I mean, you being the marketplace, one thing that I'm very feeling always hard about, having managed one of the largest property managers in the world and knowing what it means to change over houses and clean and everything else, is that, our colleagues in San Francisco, they call themselves the acronym to this industry. But at the end of the day, the hard yards are being done by the people on the ground. And that's something we need to focus more as well. And I would love to hear VRBO's, Expedia's stand on quality and execution. One argument that I bring in the conversation is, hey, when you order an Uber, I think in 99.9 of the cases, you can be rest assured the guy has a driver license, right? If you rent a property, we don't need a driver license. So what do you think VRBO and Expedia can play in lifting that quality game as a platform, as a marketplace, to be more conscious about delivering a good guest experience?
Yeah, I think the starting place for me is, our role is, transparency and accuracy of information, and creating programs that provide incentives, and Kevin can talk more about this, for our partners to basically participate and help educate travelers. I think there's two things going on in terms of how we think about what that bar is. Within VRBO, you've basically got people who've, either trying for the first time or committed to the category, and it's a different shopping experience. And so our bar is to get them confident in the selection of homes and really do a good job merchandising that, providing things like our Book with Confidence and different techniques to really just be sure they get the trial, because we know overwhelmingly that whole home offer gets people coming back. And we built an inventory profile that has less variability, because you can't rent a couch and you can't rent some spare room and all the stuff that gets confusing. The second piece, as we invest more in Expedia and Hotels.com and those types of experiences, I think the validity of it helps, because you're cross-shopping against, an IHG property or a Hilton property or a Wyndham property. So you can see the full breadth and start to do more clever things on, like, how does this compare to something else, and what does a traveler want? How do we introduce more data signals to help someone understand that people like them choose properties like this? And I think there'll be a lot of that in the future. I don't anticipate a place where we're saying the minimum quality bar is X, or you have to have proven A, B, or C in order to do this, because we do want to keep the barriers to entry low, but the expectations high, and there's always a balance there.
Kevin, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I'd like to add a couple of things. The first is, I have it in my vision plan to create Expedia Group as the trusted marketplace for vacation rentals. And I believe that we are, if not the trusted marketplace for vacation rentals, one of the most trusted marketplaces for vacation rentals. And what I mean by that is, we need travelers to come in and be able to trust that our inventory is going to deliver on a great experience. We need the partners, right, the PMCs and the RBOs, to believe that our travelers are going to be trusted travelers and that they'll sort of do right by their homes. And then we also need to work with stakeholders around the industry, whether or not it's governments or city councils or otherwise, to trust that this marketplace is delivering a great experience for partners, for travelers, but also playing a key role in sort of their local environment. And so that's a big focus of mine. The other piece that I would add is in and around, when you mention quality, I think that there's a lot of education that can go into creating quality. And there are a lot of things that we do on the partner side, on the host side, whether it's through our Premier program, where there's certain expectations and qualities of a property or of an experience that gets you into the program, or a recently launched Fast Start program, where we're trying to get owners with new inventory off to a fast start by coaching them up as they come onto our platform, and ultimately sort of giving them great benefit as they come onto the platform. We're hoping that this inventory, as we coach it, and as we think about delivering partners a successful experience with us, that they will provide great quality inventory that ultimately provides great traveler experience.
And I think that's a unique example, Simon, on the Fast Start stuff. Is a place where we're looking across the industry and basically saying, where does someone else have a quality signal or trust signal that we can help leverage on behalf of the category? You know, that could be a property manager's own reviews and history, their tenure, that sort of thing. Helps people know that they're getting a trustable product in a way that otherwise they may just be looking at a stock image.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you use the word global a lot and expansion and obviously, I would quickly like to talk about a little bit about your supply strategy again and growth. You said, you know, we want that inventory with us. How does that look geographically? Number one, and number two, how does that look location wise? Does that mean you're going to the urban space now as well, more aggressively, or and how does that look from a geography standpoint?
Yeah, I think there's two stories here. I mean, on the you know, the world's a big place, but in the moment of COVID, it's actually gotten a lot smaller. People are moving around a lot less, and so we're really focused on solving those domestic travel use cases in markets where travel's coming back. And so, you know, you're seeing, you know, in the U.S. travel is back, especially the domestic use case. Property managers selling out, and so we're really indexed on doing the thing we do best, and it's those drive-to destinations, it's resort destinations,
sure.
etc. It's really coming back in Europe now. And so, you know, France has seen a dramatic uptick, people traveling domestic booking and our property of Abertel is great at that. You know, we're starting to see signs of it coming back in Germany and in the UK. And so we want to keep rounding out those core vacation rental destinations where there's frequently not a great hotel option, or where there's frequently more choice in vacation rentals. And we're going to do that in the markets we're strongest in. And then as it relates to urban, you know, it's not a priority for us to go build out shared spaces or get someone to move out of a place for a weekend so someone can move in. You know, we want to go find, you know, the homes that provide a more upscale experience in the places where it's legal. And frankly, where it's not, and we've seen this in some places like Toronto, we're going to be a hotel business. And, you know, wait for the market to evolve in a way that we can play on a, you know, in a way that's regulatory compliant, good for neighborhoods and good for our travelers.
Makes a ton of sense. How much does availability play a role in that, in terms of quality inventory? How can you drive maximum availability for you as a channel? I mean, you said, you know, legal, great. I could not support that more. You have a lot of other metrics to consider, but obviously, you know, we had all these amazing conversations when analysts call you and say, yeah, but they have more units than the others. Like, irrelevant. The quality of the inventory is relevant, and that includes availability because, as you said, you know, the 2 weeks of the year, you know, VRBO is not too keen to have that unit because it's obviously not providing you quality inventory. Is that something that you're playing hard, or is that something you take in consideration?
Kevin, if you want to.
Yeah. So personally, the way I think about inventory is I don't look at it on a unit basis. I know that there are headline numbers that everybody wants to be, you know, have the first 5 million or the first 10 million or the first 15 million. And I couldn't agree with you more, Simon, and I believe that number is to a large extent, it's irrelevant. Because what I need to be bringing on and making available to the travelers that come to Expedia Group websites is I need inventory that has availability. And so availability and great rates and things like that are things that we coach and talk to our partners about all the time. And then secondarily, I actually need to know that Jeff and the other leaders of the brands are looking for this type of inventory. And so if somebody told me that I could have 2 million great family-friendly and family-ready homes with, you know, 50, 60, 70, 80% availability, like I would take that all day over the next 10 million 1 week units in, you know, name your city in the world. Now, that's not to say that we aren't also interested in urban inventory, and I think we've got a couple of different strategies there. But for the most part, I want to have availability of the inventory that the brands are going to sell. And I think it's critically important that we don't let the marketplaces ever get too out of balance in terms of, you know, the supply and the demand. We don't want endless supply and no demand, and obviously it's not a healthy place to be if you have endless demand and no supply. And so we're trying to maximize that sort of marketplace value.
So maybe, I know we're conscious of time and time is valuable. I'm glad enough that you've been able to make the time for our conversation. So I want to sort of start to wrap this up. And one, you gave me 2 points. One, Jeff said with the brand called Abertel, and then the branding issue, knowing HomeAway VRBO since its birth, obviously branding has been always a big challenge, and it's always a big question to the industry, definitely more than to the RBOs or the purchasers, because they probably don't care. So I probably gave you already that answer, Jeff, but I still would love to hear it. Where is that strategy on the branding issue, in terms of having still the local brands, HomeAway going through the rebranding of VRBO? Is that something that is actually less of concern more to the industry than it is actually to the consumer?
Hopefully it's not a concern for either. I mean, I hope people are just excited. And so here's where we are. The HomeAway brand is, essentially gone or going away. And so almost everywhere in the world, it is now, the markets have a lead brand, which is either VRBO or is local. Abertel being an example, Febo Direct being an example, Stays in Australia being an example. And there are a few places where there's both. And we want to be in a spot where we provide a brand that does what's best for travelers and partners. And what we realized, especially in the pandemic, was there were a handful of places where the equity of brand was actually built around the use case everyone wanted. People think of Abertel primarily as a way for French people to rent great homes in France. And that's what everybody wants. Similarly for similarly for Stays, and then similarly for Febo. And so as we've invested more into that, we're basically trying to find where we've got strength and build it out. And when we, maybe don't have as much strength, use Expedia or use hotels.com and lean into that use case more. And so I still aspire for VRBO to be a global brand, but I'm not going to force it when we've got brands that are actually serving traveler and partner needs really well. We'll keep leaning into where VRBO's strong, and you've seen it really accelerate in the UK. It's really accelerated in Canada. Sure. And we think we'll build out a nice footprint there.
Okay, absolutely. Maybe one of my last ones.
And from a partner, sorry, Simon, from a partner standpoint, I think the brand is less meaningful. And so there may still be some connection for a VRBO RBO to the VRBO brand, or for a Stays RBO to the Stays brand. But the direction that we're going from a supply standpoint is that partners, like we've been talking about throughout the entire show, they're created equal, and our goal is to get them onto the sites where they're going to perform the best. And therefore, I'm leaning more towards trying to acquire Expedia Group vacation rental inventory and not a branded vacation rental type of inventory.
Yeah, absolutely. And as long as your technology platform allows you to play that inventory across all your brands and platforms, who's going to care, right? I mean, that's more the industry that is concerned about that. So absolutely, couldn't agree with you more. Maybe the last one or the last two is on Google. You've decided to leave Google. Obviously, that's an interesting one, and so have some other colleagues of yours have decided to do the same. What is that based on? How is that to be understood? While obviously Google is still a very important demand gen as well for the group as well.
Yeah, I can take that. So, we certainly haven't left Google. We are not actively participating in one of Google's products, which is the vacation rental products, but we think we've got a great partnership with Google. In many places, we're more active than we've ever been, activity in the App Store, activity in YouTube. And so we think there's a lot to be optimized there. We left several of the meta channels because in our estimation, what we're trying to solve for in this moment is really incrementality and reaching new travelers. And that requires us to basically find new people directly in a way that isn't about price shopping. And in a lot of these channels, and I think notably the Google experience, we didn't feel like it was actually helping us to meet new travelers near so much as being a module between places where we were already active. Yeah. And it's a really hard category to shop just in that meta experience because there's so much differentiation in the product. Yeah. And we think we're better positioned to get people to come experience that on VRBO and go experience all the different merchandising techniques and ways that we can power people to really opt in to try it for the first time and repeat. And so, it's a test. There's an excellent chance we'll come back in and there's some chance we won't. But for the time being, we're really excited with the profile we've created and getting more people to come experience that with us direct. And we think it's working well for our partners too.
Excellent. Yeah. Makes a ton of sense. Now, Kevin, I'll give you the last one. In terms of commission, what are your partners expecting in terms of commission structure? Obviously, split commission, host, guest commission. We've seen some lead going to commission only. Is that, especially for partners, obviously, let's not focus on RBOs in this particular question, it's more for the partners. They want to have some visibility. Obviously, commission is an important topic to manage profitability and everything else. Can you give some outlook as well as you possibly can strategically, what partners in the future are expecting on an international and domestic level, how VRBO Expedia is handling the commission issue going forward?
Sure, I can start, and Jeff might have thoughts here as well, given his experience in the space. But I would say that what we're trying to do is to provide options for our partners to work with us in a way that they believe begets the most value for them. And so some partners want to work on a lower commission with a split with a traveler service fee. Some partners want to work on a full commission model, and we believe that we're positioned very well to be able to offer almost any business model that a partner might want in order to be able to work through us in a way that they believe creates the most value for them. As far as outlook, I don't want to project sort of where the industry is going. We'll ultimately be, a company that leads in some instances and follows in other instances with regards to business models. But I believe that we're really well positioned to offer whatever type of model the partner might want the most.
And I think that, to the earlier point, we want all the high quality homes, and so we want to minimize the barriers to entry. And I think in some case, there used to be 3 different models out there, and increasingly, probably most notably outside of the US, the commission models got the most momentum in terms of professionals. And I think they're kind of making the choice for us in some places, in that they're used to working that way. Their contracts are structured that way. And it's a little less that way in the US, where there's still significantly more idiosyncrasies in how managers structure their contracts with owners. And so we just want to be making it easy for people to work with us. We don't think there's a stark innovation to be had in what that dynamic looks like for the professionals.
Fantastic. I could have not summarized that better, Jeff. And fortunately or unfortunately, we once again agree. Looking at the industry and seeing it as a very hybrid place, we need to be able to offer alternatives. And I think we have seen that one size fits all is not going to happen in vacation rental. We have seen too much moves as new market entries, and we need to approach the market flexibly. And that's something we consult our customers with as well. There's not just exclusive contracts only. There is a hybrid model. You need to be able to fulfill, if the owner doesn't want the property managed because he has a cleaning lady for the last 30 years, he's not going to give it to you full steam, right? So when we need to accept that, and also the channels, if they can embrace that and say, hey, we have a product for you that fits your needs, that's fantastic. So first of all, thank you both, Kevin and Jeff. It's been a great pleasure. Well overdue that we meet again at a bar, and hopefully this is going to happen in San Antonio this year at the VRMA, which would be awesome. It would be great to see you both. I want to personally congratulate you for the work you guys have done and with what you have done with VRBO and the great press that you have generated. I'm super proud of you guys. It's been great to see VRBO, boosting its business and being successful in what they're doing within the Expedia Group. That's great news. A lot of kudos to you guys. You've done an awesome job leading that team and that group. My heart still beats for HomeAway VRBO, as you know, and for that, it was even more great pleasure to have you on Red Shoes Talks. Thank you for your time. Stay healthy, stay well, and hopefully see you soon. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.